Hello, students, fellow learners, academicians. Myself, Shree Malani. I'm an assistant professor in the Department of Civil Engineering in Maths University. So today, the topic of my talk is introduction to surveying, and you can see the basic principles and the basic types of surveying that we use in civil engineering, and their relevance, their importance, their applications in the field of civil engineering, and also how these types of surveying have evolved over the time. So let's begin with our lecture. So the first thing that we need to know is what is surveying actually. So I'm assuming that you all are freshers, or you're just starting with your curriculum in civil engineering. So in layman terms, we gotta see to it that when you're starting any kind of project, like in civil engineering, for example, the most basic thing that we see in our day-to-day life is a road, or is one of a project is the building that you live in, a residential building. Uh, Another, we can give you an example that an industrial building, a commercial building, railway station, railway platforms. We can take an example of a dam, of a hydroelectric plant, any kind of project that we are talking about. In civil engineering, when we start such kind of project, there is always a necessity as well as it's a mandatory thing that we need to do a survey of the place that these projects can be built on that land. Okay, so whenever there is a project which is starting, the first thing that needs to be done by a civil engineer is surveying. Okay, so basically, when we choose a place for a project to start, we need to know that the place is suitable for that kind of project or not. You cannot build a dam at a random place. There are a lot of considerations while building a dam, like how many villages have to be removed, how the upstream and downstream flow of the water would take place. Will the construction of dam affect a larger number of people? Will the construction of dam would cause a lot of flooding? So more examples, if we go into it, we can say that when we are constructing a residential building, so during that time we have to consider that the building that the land on which the building has to be constructed, it has to be even, it has to be flat, it has to be solid, so that we can lay our foundations, so that we can construct a 2 or 3 story building. Similarly, in the case of roads, we have to make sure that the road we are planning does not cut down a lot of trees. If we are talking about sustainable construction, then we have to make sure that as a civil engineer, when you are doing a preliminary survey while constructing a road, so you have to make sure that you reach from point A to point B in the shortest time possible. Okay, from point A to point B, you can take this way, you can take this way, and there is a direct way. But the thing is, uh, while you might be taking the shorter route, this route may include cutting down a lot of trees. This route may include, uh, disturbing a lot of vegetation, a lot of animals. This route may include demolition of a lot of houses of the local people. So while we are doing that, it would be not very, ethical or not very sustainable. The government exchequer would have to pay a lot of money to all the people that may be living there, and it would be a heavy loss for environment as well. So, as a civil engineer, we have to make sure that the road that we are building from point A to point B, it has to be the shortest route, and it has to be a more convenient route, and also it has to be a sustainable route. So, uh, how do we decide this? This all is done by parts and parts and parts of surveying, which we are going to study in our modules that are upcoming sessions that we are going to have. So, basic thing we can say what is surveying. The basic definition of surveying that it is the art and science of determining the relative positions of various points or station on the surface of the earth by measuring the horizontal and vertical distances, angles, and taking the details of these points by preparing a map or plan of any suitable scale. So, this definition might look complicated, might sound difficult, but basically, what we are saying is by taking measurements of various points. Okay, for example, we have a point A, then on this road itself, there is a point which is at a certain height, B, and further down the road, there may be a point which is at a depth, that is C. So, when we take measurements of various points from like from A, from B, from C, we get to know the relative position of these points with respect to each other. For example, might be at a certain elevation or height from A. C might be at a certain depth from B and A. So, this whole thing is totally dependent upon the measurements that we take, and it might be horizontal measurements. The measurements that we call horizontal are like we are measuring from a tape. For example, you might be sometimes at your home, your mother, father might have asked you, you should take a measure of this tiles, or you should measure the length and breadth of this gate. So those measurements that you are taking, those are known as horizontal measurements that are taken to parallel to the ground in which you are standing. And one type of measurement is your vertical measurement, in which we usually take the elevation. Now, do carefully remember that I am saying the word elevation. Okay, I could have used the word height, but this terminology would stand wrong in terms of civil engineering and especially in surveying. Because whenever we look at height, height has always been a positive value. You will never hear something like the height is negative. You never hear someone saying the height of Manoj is -5 feet. That is not possible. Okay, so height, due to its positive nature, is not ever used while dictating terminologies in surveying. Height is always a positive value. Therefore, while we are doing while we are taking measurements, while we are noting down measurements, it is noted that the word elevation is used, because elevation is something that can be positive as well as negative. So you can say that point B is at a positive elevation from A, and point C is at a negative elevation of A. So this is the reason that it is very important that we have to forget some of our terms that we are used to using in our day-to-day lives. But since you are now admitted into a technical course, and this course is you know very much into terminologies and practical, so we need to make sure that we know all the technical words regarding our subjects. So moving on, when you have taken all these points, then when you have measured the horizontal distances, when you have measured the vertical distances, so after doing all these measurements, the reader or a general layman, For example, you're a civil engineer, but you have to present these readings to a person who is not a civil engineer. How will he get to know the work you have done? It would be very difficult for him to, uh, to get the measurements that you have done. He might face a little difficulty in contemplating all the details. So, to present your details, you have to prepare a map or a plan. This is a very important point while you are, talking about surveying, that the ultimate aim of surveying is that you have to present it with a map or a plan. So, map may be of any kind of nature. You might have used your Google Maps in your phone, so you might have seen there are two or three modes in it. There is a satellite mode, there is a default mode in which only the roads and buildings are visible like an outline. Okay, then there is a terrain map in which the hills and the water bodies are marked precisely. So while we are doing surveying also, there are a lot of kind of maps. There is a political map in which you get to know the states and cities, city boundaries, the international boundaries. Then there is a geographical map in which the hills and mountains are specifically mentioned. Then, we are talking in terms of civil engineering, we uh, get to know the maps in which each and every details of our measurement have to be present. So, the ultimate aim of a surveying is to include all the details, include all the measurements that we are doing, and put it into a form of a map or a plan, which has to be at a suitable scale also. The scale, as in we are speaking, like if we are measuring a road of 10 kilometers, it is not physically possible to draw a road of 10 kilometers into a sheet of paper. Okay, you have to represent that 10 kilometers into a suitable scale as per the requirement of the user. For example, you need a small map. You need a local map. You need a local map of your colony. So you can represent your 1 meter equals to 1 centimeter. That would be a good scale. Okay, but if you are taking two or three colonies, then you can, diminish your scale. You can say 3 meters equals to 1 centimeter on your map. So this totally depends on the nature of work that we are doing, and the main final, the requirement of the user, and also the objectives of your survey. Talking about objective, let's move on to the objectives that